cash-strapped state entity said that its pre-audited results for the 2019 and 2020 financial year reflected a closing balance of $1.74 billion. The firm also added that the risk of power cuts will remain until after it had completed an 18-month maintenance program. And Russian-Zimbabwean platinum joint venture Great Dyke Investments expects to raise up to $500 million in funding for the first phase of its mining project in Zimbabwe by the end of this year. This is after the COVID-19 pandemic delayed talks with lenders. Well, GDI's chief executive, Alex Ivanov, said 5 banks were participating in a syndicated funding exercise led by the African Export-Import Bank. And Samsung has unveiled its latest foldable smartphone, the Galaxy Z Fold 2. The 5G-compatible phone offers users a tablet-sized screen at a price of $1,999, which of course is Samsung's most expensive handset yet. Now, the new model, however, is facing a tough market with economic uncertainties created by the pandemic, suddenly cooling demand for high-end smartphones going forward. And Mercedes-Benz has launched its new S-Class luxury sedan, which it hopes will help return it to profitability next year. This launch is particularly important for the company as it battles the fallout from the pandemic and, of course, a costly switch to electric cars. While the Mercedes CEO, Ola Kalenis, is leading a cost-cutting drive after it reported a 30% slump in second quarter revenue and a loss before interest and taxation of about $2 billion. And that is a look at our corporate headlines. Well, let's take a short break now. Still coming up on the show. Tunisia's parliament approves new government, the third one in less than a year. And capital inflows into Nigeria plunge as the coronavirus adds to the impact of low oil prices.
The world economy as we know it is about to change. Global business reports highlight emerging markets, developing countries, and dynamic sectors worldwide. We feature top analysts and newsmakers to provide perspectives on every facet of business. From an on-the-ground perspective, we provide you with balanced and objective assessments. Fast, sharp, and insightful. Global business, only on CGTN.
There's more to this place than just glorious landscapes. There's more to it than just, say, Table Mountain or glorious, endless salt flats. There's more to it than countries that are home to some of the deepest mines in the world. There is so much more to this place, even if it is home to some of the finest diamonds on the planet. It is the sheer diversity of the people who call Southern Africa home and the relentless drive to make it a better place that make it so special. And we know that because this too is home. No one knows Southern Africa like we do. CGTN, see the difference.
Welcome back. Well, Tunisia's parliament has approved Prime Minister-designate Hichem Mechichi's government, marking the country's third administration in less than a year. Now, following a 15-hour session, Mechichi's cabinet won about 134 votes out of the 217 members of parliament. This comes after the recent resignation of Elise Fakfak, whose government stayed in power for just 5 months. Mechichi proposed a government with 25 ministers and 3 secretaries of state. That includes 7 women and a blind man. He has also pledged to enact policies deemed critical to revitalizing a tourism-reliant sluggish economy that has been hit hard by the coronavirus pandemic.
النتيجة النهائية The final result is 134 yes, 0 abstentions and 67 no. And by that, the government has been approved. We congratulate the Prime Minister.
Attachment of employment and vocational training to the Ministry of Youth, Sports and Professional Integration. This choice is human and can be evaluated, and any forms are introduced to develop this field. I did not speak in my speech about a sector to which I belong, which is the security field. On this occasion, I thank the aides of the security establishment for the efforts they provide day and night and throughout the year. Efforts that enabled us to achieve great security successes.
Well, let's go to Nigeria now, where oil numbers in the country came out at about $14 million in the month of June. This is despite the Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation's move to remove subsidies by changing its pricing method. The state oil firm outlined these changes in the Under Recovery Bill, which is a term used to reference money lost through fuel sales. Well, NNPC spokesman Kenny Obateru explained that the costs represented temporary payments to marketers who buy imported fuel and then sell it on for stocks they held when the subsidy was removed. Now, this will be spread over 6 months. In March, amid a global oil crash, Nigeria cut its gasoline pump price to 48 cents a litre. It said it had eliminated the subsidies through a new price cap that maintained government controlled but allowed prices to move with the market. Well, let's find out more about the discussion on the ground. We're joined now by Deji Badmus in Lagos. Deji, good to see you. Now, of course, removal of fuel subsidies has long been a contentious issue in Nigeria, as you know. That's why, of course, these reports that the NNPC is still paying those subsidies to retailers, of course, after halting that subsidy, has raised eyebrows in the country and across Africa. So what exactly is going on, Deji?
Uche, you know, with subsidy in Nigeria here, especially petrol subsidy, it's more like a case of the more you look, the less you see. But let me just explain what the spokesperson of the NNPC has actually explained. What he said is that, look, in March, when the government removed subsidy, petrol was actually trading at that point, selling at around 138 naira 28 kobo. So what the government did back then was, when it removed subsidy, it did not just remove subsidy and allow the price of petrol to sell at 138. It removed subsidy and then crashed the price. Now, the fact is that at the time when the government crashed the price, some of these petroleum dealers actually had what you would want to call the old stock. So they bought this petrol now at the old price. So when the government now crashed the price, the subsidy we are seeing now is what the differential now. So the government is basically essentially paying these petrol dealers now for those old stock that they held, because at that time when the government crashed the price, it crashed it from 138 to 113. So the differential is what the government is now paying as subsidy. Now, the second time the government also announced a new price, the price also dropped again, even when these petrol dealers still had the old stock that, of course, they bought at higher price, but then they had to comply. So it's that differential that the government is now paying at subsidy. And what the spokesperson of the NNPC now explained is that the government, the NNPC, decided back then to spread the payment over a period of 6 months. So there's every likelihood that by July also, when the NNPC releases its statement now, we're likely to see subsidy payments there. But maybe after August, so to speak, the whole thing would disappear.
Now, of course, Deji, the halting of this subsidy was part of a new fuel pricing mechanism that the government set up. And there are questions about how well it is working so far, especially given the fact that the Petroleum Products Pricing Regulatory Agency has not yet published its retail prices since this new mechanism came into force in March. Is it working in the country so far?
It's difficult to say. The truth is that the government has actually removed subsidy. And I think one of the reasons why the PPRA has basically decided to remain silent is because it's actually a contradiction to have to say you have removed subsidy, and at the same time you have the Petroleum Pricing Regulatory Agency fixing price, because the whole idea of the removal of subsidy is that you have deregulated that sector. So it just would not make any sense at all to have the PPRA now coming to fix price, because when you fix price, it essentially means that the market has not been deregulated. So I think what we are seeing, it's a tactical move by the PPRA, not to fix price, because that will be running contrary to the whole idea of deregulation. But you know what, Uche, just today, a few hours ago, there was a new price was announced, and this time the price of petrol in Nigeria has actually gone up. It's now around 151 naira and some kobo. And that announcement was actually not made by PPRA, it was made by PPMC. PPMC is a subsidiary now of the NNPC. The full name is Pipelines Products Marketing Company. Now, this announcement was actually made to, petroleum dealers, not to the public. So it's not as if the government now came out to make any announcement. So the government, of course, will not own up to that. But the announcement was made by the PPMC, and that with effect from today, the 2nd of September, petrol will begin to sell for 151. So it's a very complex thing, and of course, as you can imagine, a lot of people are kicking against it. The labor unions have kicked against it. There's every likelihood that we might see a strike action in the coming days, because people are not taking this lying low now at all. Because apart from the price of petrol that has been increased, just yesterday the government also announced the increase of electricity tariff. So a double whammy for a lot of Nigerians, and that's the reason why a lot of people are coming out to complain. There's every likelihood we might see some kinds of forceful reaction now, especially from the labor unions, who have rejected both increases now and are demanding a reversal. But that's just the way it is, and that's the way the subsidy game is being played. We just have to wait and see how the government reacts. If Labor decides to go on strike, how the government reacts. Will the government bring back the subsidy? It's a very tough one and a very difficult to call at the moment.
Quite interesting, Deji. A new fuel price announced in Nigeria today. Many thanks for that update, and we know you're keeping tabs on the situation there. That's Deji Badmus joining us there in Lagos. Well, let's stay in the country. A new report from Nigeria's Bureau of Statistics shows that the country's capital inflow has plunged to its lowest level recorded since the 2016 and 2017 recession. Now, the drop has been fueled by the drop in crude oil prices following the coronavirus pandemic, and of course, investors avoiding emerging market assets. Here's CGTN's Kelechi Emekalam reporting.
The dwindling capital inflow is a worrying state for Nigeria's economy. Crashing from $5.85 billion in the first quarter of 2020, it now stands at $1.29 billion, a 77.9% drop. It's the worst the oil-dependent nation has recorded since 2017.
Oil revenue constitutes about 90% of Nigeria's revenue. And so when there was a threat to that particular major revenue base, then it will also affect whatever perception, credit rating of the country. Investors and possible investors, potential investors, watch the credit rating of Nigeria at all times. Nigeria, for the period, started experiencing shortage of foreign currency. And so for investors, for businesses that wanted to repatriate their funds back to their country, it was the supply of such funds. The supply was not there, and it was difficult for them to repatriate. Investors watch this trend, and when they see that it's difficult for them to repatriate their funds, they are likely to reduce investment into that particular country.
Besides the plunge in global oil prices, the decline in capital inflow is also hobbled by the COVID-19 lockdown, which has led to economic activities grinding to a halt for months, coupled with rising inflation. Besides discouraging foreign investors, the local currency, the naira, is weakening as forex earnings take a hit.
If the continuous decline we're having continues, automatically we'll get into recession. by the end of this particular quarter. So it is going to impact negatively on us because the foreign investment that comes into Nigeria actually is a major source for it's another major source for our revenue base and another major source for our foreign exchange base.
Foreign direct investment and portfolio investment also fell by 30.65% and 91.06% respectively. Now the government has been reopening various sectors of the economy. It has also moved to fund the secondary forex market, measures which economic watchers hope could attract more inflows. Kelechi Emekalam, CGTN Abuja, Nigeria.
You are watching Global Business Africa. We're going to take a short break now, still coming up on the show. A new twist on the TikTok sale in the U.S. as China tightens rules on exports of certain technologies. And we look at Elon Musk's latest project, and this time he's hacking the human brain.
No one again began holding guns. Machine guns from police forces towards the protesters.
Were you worried about your life at that particular time?
Not at all.
Thank you very much for your time. What is your assessment of the state of the continent today?
Africa has the potential to power itself.
Excuse me.
And 5:30, here's a recap of today's top headlines. An opposition politician detained after calling for anti-government protests in Zimbabwe in July has been granted bail. Now, Jacob Ngarivume was arrested for urging people to join demonstrations against alleged corruption in government and a worsening economic crisis in the country. He was arrested alongside journalist Hopewell Chinono on the 20th of July on charges of inciting violence. Both men had been denied bail 3 times previously. And heavy seasonal rains have caused severe flooding in Sudan. This has seriously damaged infrastructure and led to a lack of access to clean water. Now, reports indicate that around 2,000 water sources have been contaminated. The situation remains critical in the middle of the COVID-19 pandemic. Sudanese authorities say the River Nile is at the highest point it has ever been in 100 years. And Ghana has built its first infectious disease center. The construction of the new 100-bed hospital in the country's capital aims to support the government's fight against the coronavirus pandemic. The West African nation has recorded over 44,000 COVID-19 cases. And the United States has imposed sanctions on International Criminal Court prosecutor Fatou Bensouda and other senior officials of the Hague-based court. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo said it's over the ICC's investigation into whether American forces committed war crimes in Afghanistan. And that's a recap of today's top headlines. Now to some international news. Chinese video sharing app TikTok is trying to save its U.S. operations. This comes after President Donald Trump gave its parent company until September 15th to sell the app or shut it down in the United States. But of course, China has now imposed new restrictions on technology exports that could complicate the deal talks further. Here's CGTN's Guan Chao with more details.
It's been a month since Donald Trump signed an executive order ordering Chinese company ByteDance to halt U.S. operations of TikTok within 90 days. And he has not changed his mind.
Well, I told them that they have till September 15th to make a deal. After that, we close it up in this country. And I said that the United States has to be compensated, well compensated.
Trump signed the executive order on August the 6th, blocking all transactions with TikTok's parent company, ByteDance. He said the order would take effect in 45 days and later extended the deadline to 90 days. The order said the app could continue operations in the US only if it was sold to an American company. Trump also said the US government should get a cut of any such deal. Critics slammed this as unconstitutional and akin to extortion. TikTok filed a lawsuit against the Trump administration. Since last year, US authorities have repeatedly accused TikTok of being a potential threat to US national security, a claim rejected by TikTok. The app has been widely popular and boasts billions of downloads worldwide. Microsoft and Walmart are teaming up to make a joint offer for the app, competing with Oracle. But things are getting complicated as China last week revised bans on technology exports to cover AI, the backbone of TikTok's operations. As China-US tensions escalate, businesses are finding themselves stuck in the middle. TikTok is just one of the companies caught at the center of the storm. The Chinese Foreign Ministry is accusing the United States of double standards in its recent drive to ban what Washington considers untrusted Chinese apps.
The U.S. has rolled out the Clean Network program, but when it comes to telecoms theft, the U.S. always ranks the first in the world. In addition to pressuring AT&T, Verizon, and other carriers for data supplies, the National Security Agency has been using fake base stations named Dirtbox in its wiretapping programs, including the Boundless Informant, since more than a decade ago. Through Dirtbox, they simulate signals of base stations to tap into and steal data from cell phones.
The spokesperson also cited a report by French newspaper Le Monde that said as many as 62.5 million phone data were collected by the US in France via Dirtbox. Xingruinan, CGTN.
And in the U.S., it has emerged that tens of thousands of loans estimated to be worth billions of dollars may be subject to fraud, waste, and abuse under the Paycheck Protection Program. Now, the program, worth $659 billion, is aimed at assisting small U.S. businesses survive the coronavirus pandemic. According to a report released by Democratic lawmakers, over $1 billion went to companies that received multiple loans in violation of the program's rules. Now, the Trump administration says the program has notably saved more than 51 million jobs at a time when much of the U.S. economy has been shuttered due to the pandemic.
Today, the Select Committee is releasing a staff report raising serious concerns about potential waste, fraud, and abuse in the Paycheck Protection Program. Based on an analysis of the Treasurer data, the subcommittee identified more than 10,000 loans to companies that received multiple PPP loans, a violation of the program's terms. Thousands of other loans were awarded to companies that were ineligible for the program or had red flags indicating potential fraud. Secretary Mnuchin, I think you have previously testified that given the need to get relief money out quickly, it was inevitable that Treasury, and I quote, ran into a lot of issues, end of quote. That is a false dichotomy. Taxpayers should not have to choose between quickly getting aid to those who need it and wasting federal funds. and there are simple steps that could have been taken to improve oversight and reduce fraud.
Well, let's move on now. Tesla's CEO, Elon Musk, has become the third richest person in the world after a split in Tesla's stock sent its share prices soaring this week. Well, Elon Musk is now at it again, unveiling the latest work from yet another groundbreaking project, which has been dubbed Neuralink. And it takes on one of the most complex systems known, the human brain. Here's Mark New with the details.
He built the world's most successful electric car company, Tesla.
Liftoff.
And the company SpaceX, which just launched astronauts into orbit. Now, Elon Musk is embarking on another equally challenging mission, hacking the human brain.
I think it's going to blow your mind.
Musk's new venture, Neuralink, will implant this device into a patient's skull.
It's kind of like a Fitbit in your skull with tiny wires.
Neuralink aims to make the procedure automated, with this robot cutting an incision in the skull and inserting the device. The robot has already done surgeries on pigs like Gertrude, who's had the chip for 2 months.
The beeps you're hearing are real-time signals from the Neuralink in Gertrude's head. So this Neuralink connects to neurons that are in her snout. So whenever she snuffles around and touches something with her snout, that sends out neural spikes.
By putting a pig on a treadmill, Neuralink showed how the brain chip was able to predict the pig's joint movements, which look, compared to the actual movements, almost exactly the same. Musk says they're working with the FDA to move toward clinical trials with humans. The #1 target is spinal cord injury.
If you can sense what somebody's trying to do with their limbs, what they want to do with their limbs, then you can actually do a second implant that's at the base of the spine or wherever, just after wherever the spinal injury occurred, and you can create a neural shunt. So I'm confident that long-term, it will be possible to restore somebody's full body motion. So if somebody even has a severed spine, they will be able to walk again.
Somebody that's got mental degradation, quadriplegic, bipolar, insanity problems, I mean, things that their life is so miserable it is worth taking a risk like this to end the misery. That's the target audience for this initially. It may eventually evolve into something that we might all have for computer interfaces, but we're decades off from that.
Musk answered questions about moving even deeper into the brain and predicted the technology could lead to someday replaying memories.
Everything that's encoded in memory, you could upload. You could basically store your memories as a backup and restore the memories. And ultimately, you could potentially download them into a new body or into a robot body. The future is going to be weird.
Musk says Neuralink will probably be quite expensive when it's first launched, but he expects the price to drop rapidly over time. He says eventually it'll be down to just a few $1,000s, including the surgery. And he compares it to a LASIK eye procedure where you'll be able to go in, have the chip installed in your brain, and then head home the very same day. Mark New, CGTN, Sunnyvale, California.
And let's go to Australia now. The country's economy has plunged into its first recession in nearly 3 decades as it suffers the economic fallout from the pandemic. Now, GDP shrank about 7% in the April to June quarter compared to the previous 3 months. More than 1 million people have lost their jobs since March, and the country has shut down entire sectors of the economy, hitting private sector demand and investments. However, the government has stepped up with more than $297.7 billion of stimulus.
Today's national accounts confirm the devastating impact on the Australian economy from COVID-19. Our record run of 28 consecutive years of economic growth has now officially come to an end. The cause? A once-in-a-century pandemic. The effect? A COVID-19 induced recession. Real GDP fell in the June quarter by 7%, the largest quarterly fall on record. Since the series began in 1959, this is its largest ever fall. Our commitment to the Australian people is that we have your back. We were with you on the way into this crisis. We are with you through this crisis. And we will be with you all the way out of this crisis.
Meanwhile, in Japan, the Chief Cabinet Secretary Yoshihide Suga has confirmed his candidacy for the premiership. The 71-year-old is seen as a likely winner of the ruling party's leadership after having secured the backing of 5 of the 7 factions in the Liberal Democratic Party. Now, his competitors for the top job are former Defense Minister Shigeru Ishiba and Party Policy Chief Fumio Kishida. A vote is expected on September 14th. Shinzo Abe, who is Japan's longest-serving prime minister, recently announced his resignation over health concerns. And in London, the government has rolled out a program to encourage people to walk or cycle. It is giving more space for bicycle lanes and pavements to help with social distancing during the COVID-19 outbreak. Here's CGTN's Nawid Jabrakil with more.
Nabi Toktash recently bought a bike. Cooped indoors as a result of COVID-19, he eventually chose to ditch his car in favour of 2 wheels.
And I decided to cycle to work because we've got wider paths now, it's much safer and it's easier to cycle now. And of course the cost as well, because we have lost many income, so we had to cut down on cost. And the car, costs normally £100 a month, whereas this one is only £10.
Nabi's not alone. Thousands of others in London are also turning their backs on automobiles. The Mayor of London has launched a programme called Street Space that aims to boost cycling lanes and widen walkways. Sadiq Khan says the move will enable better social distancing while reducing pollution. As lockdown measures are eased further, officials are gearing up for a 10-fold increase in cycling and a 5-fold increase in walking. Experts say other global cities are thinking along similar lines.
The avoided costs of the ravages of the pandemic, economic, health, and otherwise, and also the current and especially the future costs of climate change, those costs will be much greater than spending on appropriate infrastructures to improve our cities so they'll be resilient and sustainable well into the future.
Changing central London's historical streets is a bold move and will likely cost taxpayers hundreds of millions of dollars. That's an important consideration at a time when COVID-19 has damaged the economy and public finances. But supporters of the move say the health benefits of more walking and cycling and fewer cars on the road will mean it's money well spent.
The Mayor of London's office declined an interview request but said cleaner air is a priority. For Nabi, he's enjoying the novelty of zipping around the city, but he's realistic about the limitations of cycling.
I'm a small business owner. I mean, although I can cycle to work and back, there are certain things which is not doable by a bicycle, so you have to use your car.
For those that do want to keep on driving in London, they'll soon be sharing these roads with a few more bikes.
Now, the China International Fair for Trade in Services will be held in Beijing this month. Ahead of the event, we look at another example of how COVID-19 is transforming everyday habits and lives. For China's teachers and students, that means embracing online learning, even as they are returning to classrooms this fall. CGTN's Sanya has a story.
Wow, free!
In her 9 years of teaching before 2020, Liu Qiancheng was never not in the same room as her students. So the move to talking to a camera alone when COVID-19 struck was sudden.
It's not easy, especially at first when the kids had to stay in front of a screen for so long. We've started to play a lot more games now while teaching online. We prepare activities to grab their attention.
Liu has got the hang of it, and her students are now used to learning online. We asked third grader Jia Yuxuan about her routine.
I take Chinese, math, and English online. Yes, my dancing lessons are online too.
Almost overnight, online learning has become the only kind of learning people can access. Some 300 million students in China have spent the past semester largely in front of a screen. But even as schools reopen this fall, distance learning is here to stay.
We are clear about this. There will be no more traditional teaching that involves only the classroom. For us, online and offline experiences will merge. So in the future, even when we talk about offline studying in a certain place, that will be supported by online sessions.
Analytical firm U.S China estimates the pandemic has sped up the development of online education by 2 to 3 years, and they say growth should be sustained until at least 2024, as China's smallest cities and counties warm up to distance learning.
We are definitely experiencing increased demand. We're doubling the number of this year's new recruits because of this trend.
For Liu and her students, they are returning to classrooms this fall, but they will also meet up regularly in front of the screen. It's all part of the new normal brought on by the pandemic. Sun Ye, CGTN, Beijing.
Well, let's turn our attention now to our special series, Redesigning the Future. And today we look at the future of shopping. CGTN's Paul Barber explores some of the wholesale changes facing the industry amidst the pandemic.
The effects of the pandemic on retailers are dramatically apparent. Bricks and mortar shops have struggled, with daily headlines on job cuts and store closures across the globe. The big winner has, of course, been digital retail, with record numbers of shoppers going online. The UK supermarket Waitrose says more than 75% of people in the UK now do at least some online grocery shopping. The world of shopping will play a key role in the global economic recovery and remains one of the world's key steps to recovery. In 2020, worldwide retail sales are expected to reach $23.6 trillion, and that's down 5.7% from last year. The lockdown was brutal for high street retailers, but all might not be lost. UK retail sales in July were higher than before the pandemic. Sales in clothing shops grew by nearly 12%, while online shopping fell by 7% in the same month. The pandemic is accelerating longer-term trends. Again, e-commerce continues to thrive. While many retailers are cutting jobs, online giants are expanding. Amazon said it will hire 75,000 new people due to surging demand. It's a similar picture in China, where e-commerce giant Alibaba posted a staggering 124% rise in quarterly profit, despite 7 straight months of declining retail sales in China. So the retail industry has changed dramatically for consumers, companies, and everyone employed by the industry. The real question is, just how permanent will these changes be?
And shifting focus now, let's take a look at commodity markets today. Oil prices hovering around $46 a barrel. They are gaining, of course, for a third day. Prices were supported by a report that U.S. crude inventories are falling. Now, traders are saying market players are currently riding a wave of optimism in the market, but it remains uncertain and prices could come crashing down at any moment. Meanwhile, gold prices down today as the dollar rebounded, suddenly tempering the safe havens allure. But the broader picture is still in favor of gold. Also, platinum slipping over 3% today, but analysts are also saying that as appetite for gold continues, investors are now looking to precious metals such as platinum and gold. Prices of the metal have rallied nearly 59% since a sell-off in March. Well, let's take a quick break now. Still to come on the show. A health startup in Kenya develops a platform for patients to meet doctors virtually.
Images may appear to be identical, but looks can be deceiving. The difference is not always obvious. It has to be discovered. There are always different sides to a story. We put the focus on the details. To see more, to understand better. CGTN. See the difference.
Now in Kenya, an e-health startup has come up with a digital platform which takes care of patients directly from the comfort of their own homes in Nairobi. Tibu Health decentralizes primary outpatient care and is now helping people stay safe during the COVID-19 outbreak.
This smartphone app is helping patients get the treatment they need while maintaining social distancing. From $10 for a consultation fee, they can receive the services of a doctor within 20 to 30 minutes after request.
It gives me an opportunity to avoid the risk of going to the hospital and making long queues, remembering that my age is that risky age where we are not supposed to go where there are so many people, and therefore I find it very, very convenient for me and to avoid getting these COVID.
We take the doctor, the clinic, and the lab, and we bring it directly to the patient wherever they are.
In collaboration with Lancet Kenya, Tibu also conducts COVID-19 tests at a cost of $110 at home. The results are then sent via email to the patient. The platform is particularly relevant during the coronavirus pandemic, a time when many vulnerable people would prefer to stay at their homes and avoid hospitals.
So in this time of the COVID pandemic, there's 50 to 60% decrease in visits to clinics and hospitals. So we're a strategic solution where we are able to deliver the healthcare services to people and keep them out of those locations. And they're worried to go to those locations for exposure to COVID, so they prefer to stay home and safe.
Launched in May, patients can request medical assistance, after which they get paired up with the closest doctor. The medical practitioner then heads to their homes, depending on the level of urgency.
For us, it's extremely relevant that we can bring the healthcare services to the patient, keep them safe, keep them comfy at home. It's very private. All of the data that is collected is encrypted. It's not stored on the patient's phone. It all gets shot up to our servers. So now the patients have access to all of their medical records on demand, which is an extremely powerful follow-up tool in the healthcare continuum.
The app currently has 2,300 users within Nairobi, as Kenyans continue to embrace technology in the healthcare industry. Chao Muhono, CGTN.
Well, let's head to Tunisia now, where a group of developers have designed software that uses artificial intelligence to detect COVID-19 symptoms in patients' lungs. Now, the software works by comparing lung X-ray images of already infected patients with those of suspected cases. Let's take a look.
Artificial intelligence has long been used in medical scans, and now Tunisia is using the technology to detect coronavirus infections.
Applying artificial intelligence on medical scans is something that surfaced years ago. They began using it to figure out diseases, whether it's COVID-19 or other diseases. So here, we had the idea to combine AI and medical images because AI has the ability to analyze a lot of images in little time and at low cost.
The software uses chest X-rays and CT scans to search for COVID-19 infections. It is guided by tens of thousands of pulmonary images from hospitals in China, Italy and Spain, which were fed into the system to enrich its database and enhance its comparison abilities. An algorithm then determines if the person is COVID-19 positive or not.
Well, here we can see the regions that were detected by the software, using deep knowledge of COVID-19 presence in the lungs. This application is interesting, especially for mass detections, if we want to analyze hundreds or thousands of images every day. That will help the medical team diagnose patients rapidly.
This platform by processing images searches for the print of the COVID-19 inside the human lung. And in this way, we can know if the person has the virus or not.
The software was finalized in March and has been approved by the Tunisian Health Ministry. It costs approximately $3,000. The developers are hoping to improve it to detect other diseases such as lung cancer, Chom Wono, CGTN.
Well, before we leave you today, here's a quick look at how Africa's currencies performed. Emerging market currencies eased today as we saw the dollar bounce back from two-year lows. South Africa's rand slipping 0.4%. Now, traders say there was some profit-taking after strong gains in the previous session. In Nigeria, the official exchange rate depreciated to close at 386 naira per dollar. In sharp contrast, the exchange rate at the parallel market recorded yet another record gain. It closed at around 440 naira per dollar. Well, that is it for this edition of Global Business Africa. Remember, you can send your feedback to the contacts on your screen. You can also follow us on our various digital media platforms. From me, Uche Okoronkwo, and the rest of the team, thanks for watching.